I mean, she took her job seriously and personally, and you know, she had a good relationship with her kids, that's for sure. You know, I thought, you know, she's a good mother as well as a good teacher. I mean, she's left a hole. For a lot of her kids, I'm sure there's going to have to be counseling and to deal with, you know, a lot of them have never faced a death like this. Most of us haven't either. So it'll be difficult to deal with, but I'm sure we'll come together as a community and as a school to remember her and express to each other how much we'll miss her.
Emotions are raw after an attack in rural Nova Scotia left at least 18 people dead over the weekend. It's one of the deadliest mass killings in this country's history. Healthcare workers, a teacher, parents, and a 17-year-old girl are among the victims. Investigators warn the death toll could still rise as they search through 16 different crime scenes over at least 50 kilometers. As police continue that investigation, we spoke with Scott Armstrong about Lisa McCully in front of you there. She was a 3rd and 4th grade teacher at Debert Elementary School, about 25 kilometers east of Portapique. Scott Armstrong is, of course, a former Conservative MP. He serves as principal of her school. I spoke to him from Brookfield, Nova Scotia. Hi, Mr. Armstrong. Good to have you with us.
Thank you, Vashi.
How are you doing?
Well, it's been an awful rough couple of days. My staff and myself at Debert Elementary were devastated, and this is going to be a really, really tough time for our students and our families.
So you worked with Lisa McCully, correct?
Yeah, I've served as the principal at Debert Elementary School over the last 3 years. I've worked with her. She's been a teacher in our school for the last 5 years, and she was just a consummate teacher, a ray of sunshine, and you know, I just can't believe she's gone, and our staff are frankly devastated by the events which took place over the weekend.
I was going to say, you must be hearing from her other colleagues, students in the school. There must be a lot of shock.
Yes, and typically when things like this do happen to schools, they're not under the same circumstances. We can't get together because of the COVID-19 restrictions. But also, I mean, who would have thought in our small rural communities in this area that we would have such a terrible, heinous act performed on so many families. And, you know, I mean, Lisa was just a fabulous person. She's was one of the most positive people I've ever met and worked with. And for this to happen to her and her family is just an absolute tragedy. And there are many families hurting in our communities right now. And our thoughts go to all of them. And on behalf of our staff, we're like I said, we're feeling devastated, but we're also reaching out to our students throughout the school and their families. This is just a traumatic time for young people that would have had her as a teacher this year or other years, or been students in our school, or students that have graduated from our school and moved on to the junior high or high school as well.
You mentioned how valued she is, or how valued she was. What was she like? What would you want people to know about her?
Oh, like I said, she was one of the most positive people you could ever meet. She loved art. She loved music. And teaching was at the heart of everything she did. First and foremost, she was a mom. She was a single mom. She has a son, Marcus, in elementary school, and a daughter, Alex, in the junior high age group. And, you know, they were the center of everything she did. Her life revolved around them. And she, in turn, took that love she had for her own children and treated the children in her class the same way. She brought that in with her. And, you know, if she walked into the room where her students were sitting, a smile would immediately appear on all their faces. They thought incredibly highly of her. They knew that she cared about them like a mother cares about their own children. And she was able to just create that type of atmosphere in her classroom and throughout our building, quite frankly. And, you know, for the last several weeks, she's been doing e-learning like the rest of the country, with the students staying at home and the teachers providing lessons and assessment online. She was a leader in our school. She was able to support other teachers. She was the first one to grasp a hold of that with both hands and really change the way we're instructing students now into the current conditions with the COVID-19 issue we're dealing with. And, you know, to see her do that and reach out to her students and her parents and their families and still keep positive throughout this issue, and to have something like this happen is just absolutely devastating. It's the only way I can describe it.
What grade did she teach?
She was a grade 3-4 teacher. She had a split class. She's taught several classes throughout the rural part of Nova Scotia. Like I said, she's been in our school for 5 years. She's taught the 6th grade. But over the years, she's taught most grades in the mid to upper elementaries. And at one point, she served as a vice principal of the school, but returned to the classroom because that really was where her heart was, is actually teaching students in class every day. That was basically her second home. Her home away from home was the classroom. And she was a leader on our staff, and we will miss her every day. Our staff are simply devastated.
I can't even imagine. Mr. Armstrong, we've heard from the RCMP that some of the victims were known to the suspect and some were not. Do you have any idea of the circumstances around Lisa? Did she know this suspect at all?
Yeah, she would have known the suspect. I didn't know him. He wasn't well known in Portapic, in that community where she lived, but he did live near her. He was a neighbor. And by all accounts, there was a good relationship amongst that neighborhood. We have no idea why this would happen. He was in that area. Several of those people in that area were victims of this heinous crime. So she did know him, but there wasn't that strong a personal relationship to our knowledge.
You touched on a few minutes ago how different the circumstances are right now for your students and your staff to try and mourn Lisa, try and even take comfort in each other. Is there any virtual way of doing that? How are you going to attempt to go about that?
Well, we had a staff. I spoke to all the teachers in the school yesterday, both classroom teachers and support staff, and we had a meeting today with psychologists and counselors and people from mental health who have expertise in this area to see what we could best do to support our school community, and particularly her students that were in her class. So all the students in our school are receiving calls, as well as their parents, from the teachers in their classroom. We're reaching out to the students in her classroom by phone, making sure if there's anything they need, if they need counseling, if they need connection to mental health. We have a Schools Plus program here where they will actually go out and support families directly. So, it's our job as the local school to make sure that any resources that we can provide through mental health, through our school system, through our counseling programs, can be provided directly to those families. So that's what our task is in the next couple of days. We're reaching out immediately. If this was a normal circumstance, we would have these resources available at the school site. Parents and students could come in and get counseling services, see a psychologist, or other things they may need through a traumatic experience like this. And under the current healthcare crisis, that's not possible. So we're going to do our best to make sure we reach out and try to connect any parent and any student that needs support the best way we can. And because we know the families and we know the students, it's a small rural community. We're going to do our best to connect them with the resources and the things that they need.
You know that community so well. It is small and it is rural. I can only imagine trying to put myself in those shoes and the level of disbelief at a heinous crime like this taking place.
Yeah, we all know each other. It's a small rural community. Portapic. I'm from Brookfield, which is close by. Debert's in between. There's family members for most of our staff in that area. There are other children in our school that are related or have relationships with other victims who had their lives taken by this assailant. And the interconnections you would see in a small rural community would shock you to see just how many people in that community are connected directly to one of the victims. And this is the worst shooting we've experienced in Canada. For it to take place in a community like this, where people leave their doors open, they can walk in each other's houses, it's surreal. It's just something you would never ever think could happen in a community like the ones we live in.
Well, we are certainly thinking of all of you, your staff, the students in your school, and as well as her 2 children. You mentioned Lisa's 2 children. Really appreciate you making time for us this evening, Mr. Armstrong.
Well, thank you, Vash, and we appreciate the opportunity to share all the good things we know about Lisa McCully and the tremendous teacher and positive person she was. We'll miss her greatly.
Appreciate you doing that. Our condolences to all of you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.